I'm on the phone with Bruce Lawson, web evangelist at Opera, a web accessibility and a web standards advocate, and an author of an HTML5 book. Good afternoon or good evening, your time in the UK, Bruce, and thanks for taking the call.
Hi, Bill. It's really good to speak to you.
I appreciate that. Bruce, you got a lot going on. You're a noted speaker. You've been in this space for a long time. We could talk about a variety of things, but you've given some presentations recently about your efforts on HTML5. Could you share some of those perspectives with the listeners and subscribers of the webprofessionals.org podcast?
Sure. I'm a web professional, really. Before I worked for Opera, I was the webmaster for a big UK legal site. So I'm interested in markup, obviously, and I can see this new HTML5 thing coming along, but couldn't make head nor tail of the specification because it's written by brain boxes for brain boxes. So I figured the easiest way to get my hat on with what was going on was turn a website into HTML5 and document it as I went. And as I've got a blog and I own the keys to it, I just started wrestling the WordPress themes to be HTML5 and fired off a few emails to people in the know to ask them what on earth the spec was talking about, and fired off a couple of suggestions to the people writing the spec where I thought the explanation wasn't quite as clear as it could be. And from that, I think people quite liked the idea that there was some guy, i.e. me, dedicated to explaining it to people like them. It's simple as that. I'm no brain box, I'm no guru, and that's why I think I've carved out a little niche for myself with explaining the technology in a non-hysterical manner to jobbing web developers.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that's very valuable, Bruce. I really want to emphasize the benefit of that because there's so much going on in our space to do.
Ever increasing.
Right, it's incredibly complex, and so having straight responses and putting things in context is very valuable. Let's talk about your book. You have an HTML5 book you co-wrote, I guess, with Remy Sharp.
That's right. Yeah, Remy is Remy is kind of God's JavaScript. If God needs JavaScript written, he would ask Remy because Remy's so amazingly clever at it, and I know enough JavaScript to be dangerous, but that's about it. So, as there's so much JavaScript in HTML5, and I knew Remy, I asked him if he'd co-author with me, and it's been a good relationship. We started off as co-authors and now became friends, and we're just finishing off the second edition, which will be out in September, which is a reasonably comprehensive revamp with a new chapter and some new information in it, as well as clearing up typos and bugs in the first edition.
Sure, I can appreciate that. What were some of the walkaways? What would you like web professionals to know about HTML5 and some of the lessons in your book?
Well, one of the things I'd like web professionals to know, to know about HTML5 is they don't necessarily have to care about it. If you just read the kind of semi-professional press, you'd be forgiven for thinking that every website that isn't HTML5 is suddenly going to grind to a halt. It won't. HTML5 extends your current the current markup language you can use. But if you've got an HTML4 website that's churning away nicely, or an XHTML1 website that's churning away nicely, it will continue to work forever. There's no need to panic. You don't have to go and HTML5ify your site just because everybody's talking about it. The second thing I'd like everybody to know is that most things that people say are HTML5 are not, actually. CSS3 has nothing to do with HTML5. SVG has nothing to do with HTML5. jQuery has nothing to do with HTML5. Geolocation has nothing to do with HTML5, although naughtily Remy and I talk about it in our book. So that there's a whole slew of other technologies just as exciting as HTML5 to know about as well.
You developed a WordPress theme plugin for contact. Can you share a little bit of, what was some of the challenges and benefits of that?
The challenges, to be honest, were simply so my blog's always been a WordPress blog, and I'm no PHP guy, but I read enough of it to be able to understand where I hack to change stuff. And as I was going through looking at my content, looking at blog posts and comments on blog posts and publication dates, and trying to mirror those to the HTML5 spec and the new features it gives us, I was of necessity having to hack the WordPress theme. So now instead of div class equals post, it produces an article element, and instead of a div class equals comment, as in the old theme, it produces a nested article, and instead of paragraph published on and the date, it now says published on, and then there's a time element formatted in a manner that search engines can read, for example. And simply because I'd been blogging the choices I was making and seeking help from the community, I thought it was only fair to say to people, if you want to grab this theme, which is pig ugly, by the way, and nobody should ever use it, but if you want to grab it just to look at, be my guest and get a zip file. And similarly with the contact form, I've temporarily turned that off because I had somebody take over my website and send a billion spam emails a day a couple of days ago. But
Yikes.
I know. An ancient developer account with a weak password that I haven't used in 4 years was to blame there.
Happens to the best of us, Bruce.
It does. But the
Trust
contact form, the contact form is just using the new HTML5 form things like you can tell the browser that email address is required, and it won't let you submit it if you don't put something in there, and the browsers can validate whether you've typed in a correct URL and email address without JavaScript. So I tweak somebody else's theme, as I always do. Take something that works that somebody else wrote and then tweak it around the edges and claim victory. It always works.
Where would we find out more information about this theme and your book and all that you do?
You'd go to brucelawson.co.uk or you'd go and follow me on Twitter, and it's Bruce L. But I warn you that that's kind of a heady mix of technical stuff, grumpy diatribes and opinion about anything that takes my fancy. I've never been great at separating my work from my real life because I'm employed to do my hobby, you see. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I applaud you for that, and certainly appreciate all that you do in the web profession. You're interested in this topic and supporting accessibility and standards for your time today.
No, thank you. And actually, of course, I get a salary from my employers at Opera. So those are the guys who pay me to do the work for the professional community. So
yeah, gotta love that.
Cool, man. Cool.
Even better yet.